Have you ever wondered why the shadow of another's success can feel like a shroud over your own light, rendering your deepest desires and silent struggles utterly invisible? It is a common ache, a quiet throb in the heart of many. This feeling that one's intrinsic worth is somehow diminished by the perceived brilliance of another. This pervasive sense of inadequacy, often rooted in the unconscious comparison to idealized projections, casts a long and cold shadow, making the heart feel unseen, unheard, and profoundly alone. It is a subtle poison, seeping into the soul, convincing one that their unique symphony of being is merely a discordant note in the grand, harmonious overture of others. In a land veiled by ancient mist and whispered legends, nestled between emerald hills and a winding, silver river, lived Elara. Her village, Eldoria, was renowned not for its grand structures or booming trade, but for its weavers. Their tapestries were living dreams, each thread imbued with the essence of their spirit, their stories. Elara, from a young age, possessed a rare gift for the craft. Her fingers danced with an almost ethereal grace, coaxing vibrant hues from the simplest flax and silk. Her designs were not merely patterns. They were emotions woven into being, landscapes of the soul, stories of the wind and the whispering leaves. Yet, even with this inherent talent, a persistent shadow clung to her, a faint disquiet that no amount of intricate weaving could entirely dispel. The source of this shadow was not malevolent, but rather a beacon of brilliance named Lyra. Lyra was Eldoria's undisputed prodigy. Her tapestries were not just exquisite, they were revolutionary. She experimented with unheard-of dyes, incorporating fragments of precious stones into her work, creating textures that seemed to breathe. Her fame extended far beyond Eldoria's borders, merchants from distant kingdoms journeying just to gaze upon her creations, to possess a piece of her genius. When Lyra's latest masterpiece, the Celestial Bloom, was unveiled, it was as if the sun itself had descended into the village square. Its threads shimmered with an inner light, depicting a nebula of impossible colors, each stitch a testament to an unparalleled vision. The villagers gasped, awe etched on their faces, their praises echoing through the valley like a joyous anthem. Elara was there, of course, standing at the edge of the crowd, her own heart a complex tapestry of admiration and a gnawing, familiar ache. She saw the genuine wonder in the eyes of her neighbors, the pride radiating from Lyra's family, the humble, yet undeniable confidence in Lyra's posture. A part of her rejoiced for Lyra, for the beauty she brought into the world. But another part, a smaller, more insistent voice, whispered, "Why not you, Elara? Why is your art merely beautiful, when hers is divine?" This insidious whisper was not born of malice, but of a deeply ingrained pattern of comparison, a shadow archetype that saw every external success as a reflection of one's own internal lack. Elara had always been a quiet child, content in her own company, finding solace in the rhythmic click of her loom. But the world, even the small world of Eldoria, constantly presented mirrors. The faster runner, the more eloquent speaker, the more celebrated artist. Unconsciously, she had absorbed the belief that her worth was tethered to how she measured up against these external benchmarks. Lyra, with her effortless brilliance, became the ultimate measuring stick. One particularly harsh winter, when the snow fell relentlessly and the villagers sought solace in the warmth of their hearths, Elara found herself struggling to find inspiration. Her loom sat silent, a silent reproach. The vibrant hues she usually drew from within seemed muted, her imagination barren. She heard snippets of conversation from the market. Lyra's latest commission is for the king himself? Or, have you seen the golden threads Lyra is using now? Each fragment was a fresh prick, a reminder of her own perceived stagnation. The ache in her heart intensified, making her feel as though her creative wellspring had dried up, not because of a true lack, but because the shadow of comparison had obscured her own light. One frigid afternoon, while foraging for rare berries that defied the frost, Elara stumbled upon an ancient, gnarled oak, its branches heavy with snow. Tucked into the hollow of its trunk was a small, intricately carved wooden box. Curiosity piqued. She opened it to find a single, faded parchment. It was an ancient proverb, written in a script she barely recognized, yet its meaning resonated deeply within her. The sun does not dim its light for the stars, nor do the stars cease to twinkle for the moon. Each shines in its own time, in its own way, fulfilling its unique purpose in the cosmic dance. The words seemed to hum with an ancient wisdom, a quiet revelation. It wasn't about being better than Lyra, or even as good as Lyra. It was about her own unique purpose, her own particular brilliance. The proverb spoke of individuation, of the soul's journey to realize its unique pattern, untainted by external pressures. Yet, the deep-seated habit of comparison was not easily shed. It clung like a second skin, whispering doubts even as the new understanding began to dawn. A few weeks later, a traveling merchant arrived in Eldoria, his wares exotic and his tales even more so. He spoke of a plague of a mysterious blight afflicting the royal gardens in a distant kingdom, causing their prized moon-petal flowers to wilt and die. No remedy had been found. The king, desperate, had offered a substantial reward for anyone who could create a tapestry depicting the moon petal in its true, vibrant glory, believing it might hold a symbolic cure or inspiration. Lyra, predictably, was already engrossed in creating her version, her loom working day and night. Elara felt the familiar pang of inferiority. How could her humble moon petals compare to Lyra's radiant visions? Yet, a flicker of defiance stirred within her. The proverb, the quiet wisdom of the oak, resonated. She wouldn't create a moon petal for the king or for Lyra or for anyone else's approval. She would create a moon petal for herself, for the ache in her own heart, for the silent yearning to feel her own intrinsic value. She began to work. Instead of focusing on outward splendor, she delved into the essence of the moon petal as she remembered it from childhood. Its delicate luminescence under the moonlight, the subtle tremor of its petals in the evening breeze, its resilience against the night's chill. She didn't seek new dyes or exotic threads. Instead, she used the familiar, humble materials of Eldoria, but with an intensity and focus she hadn't known she possessed. She spent days observing the moon, sketching its ethereal glow, remembering the whisper of the wind through the moon petal leaves. Her movements at the loom became a meditation, a release of the internalized pressure. Each thread she wove was an affirmation of her own vision, a silent declaration of her unique artistry. She wasn't competing, she was creating. The act itself became a healing balm, slowly dissolving the gnawing comparison. The moon petal she wove was not grand or ostentatious. It was understated, almost hauntingly beautiful, imbued with a quiet luminescence that seemed to emanate from within the fabric itself. It captured the moon petal's essence, its fragility, its resilience, and its profound, solitary beauty. She called it Whispers of the Lunar Bloom. When the time came for the king's envoy to judge the tapestries, Elara presented hers without expectation. Lyra's tapestry was, as expected, a marvel of vibrant colors and intricate detail, a dazzling spectacle. Elara's Whispers of the Lunar Bloom seemed almost modest in comparison, its beauty subtle, requiring a moment of quiet contemplation to truly appreciate. Yet, when the envoy, a wise old woman with eyes that seemed to see into the soul, gazed upon Elara's work, a profound silence fell. She didn't gasp or exclaim. Instead, a gentle smile touched her lips, and she simply said, This is the moon petal as it truly is. It speaks of its spirit, not just its form. Elara did not win the king's reward. Lyra's tapestry was chosen for its vibrant symbolism and grandeur, a fitting tribute for a royal garden. Yet, as the envoy spoke, Elara felt something shift within her. The absence of external validation did not sting as it once would have. A deep, quiet peace settled over her. She saw the genuine appreciation in the envoy's eyes, and that was enough. She had created from a place of authenticity, not comparison. The ache in her heart had not vanished entirely, but it had softened, leaving behind a nascent sense of her own intrinsic worth. The invisible heart had begun to reveal its own unique and undeniable light. The individual who constantly measures their intrinsic worth against the perceived external brilliance of others often embodies the archetype of the shadow-bound seeker. This individual, deeply susceptible to ego projection, internalizes the achievements and attributes of others as a personal deficit, perpetually living in the shadow of an idealized other. This isn't born of malice, but from a profound internal insecurity, a belief that their own unique light is insufficient. The theme here is the pervasive societal conditioning that champions external validation and comparison, often stifling the process of individuation. This character yearns for recognition, yet paradoxically, through the act of comparison, they render themselves invisible, their authentic self obscured by the overwhelming presence of projected ideals. You, who may recognize this ache within your own heart, are not alone. The quiet hum of comparison is a pervasive melody in the modern world, orchestrated by countless subtle societal cues. To begin to heal this wound, you must first recognize the shadow at play, the unconscious belief that your worth is external, earned through competition and comparison. This is a vital step in shadow work, bringing the unseen forces that drive your self-perception into the light of conscious awareness. Consider the wisdom of the Stoics, particularly Epictetus, who reminded us that true tranquility lies in discerning what is within our control and what is not. The brilliance of another is not within your control. Your response to it, however, is, begin to cultivate a radical self-acceptance. You are a unique constellation of experiences, talents, and imperfections, and there is no blueprint for your particular existence. Your journey of individuation is precisely that, yours. Embrace the subtle beauty of your own creation, whether it be a quiet act of kindness, a moment of profound contemplation, or a work of art born from your deepest truth. Just as the moon does not compete with the sun, nor the river with the ocean, your essence is complete in itself. Your heart is not invisible. It is simply awaiting your own gaze to truly see its unique and undeniable radiance. Offer yourself the same compassion and quiet appreciation you might extend to a cherished friend. Most women, at some point, have felt the sting of comparison when it comes to relationships, a subtle yet insidious belief that another's romantic narrative is somehow richer, more fulfilling, or more effortlessly achieved than their own. This silent agony, often born from observing curated ideals, can lead to a profound sense of emotional isolation, making one's deepest desires for connection feel utterly unseen, as if their capacity for love, or their very desirability, is somehow lacking. In the bustling heart of a sprawling city, where skyscrapers pierced the clouds and the rhythm of life was a relentless drumbeat, resided Anya. Her life was a vibrant tapestry of dedication. A demanding career as an architect, a small but cherished circle of friends, and a passion for urban gardening that transformed her balcony into a verdant oasis. By all outward appearances, Anya was a woman of accomplishment and quiet contentment. Yet, beneath this composed exterior lay a persistent, gnawing emptiness, a feeling that her romantic life, or rather, the conspicuous absence of a conventional one, rendered her somehow incomplete, profoundly invisible in a world that seemed to celebrate partnered existence above all else. Anya's friends, a constellation of bright, dynamic women, were, to varying degrees, immersed in relationships. There was Chloe, whose whirlwind romance with a charming artist culminated in a picturesque wedding. Their social media feeds a constant stream of sun-drenched honeymoons and cozy domesticity. Then there was Maya, whose steadfast, long-term relationship with her childhood sweetheart radiated a comfortable, enduring warmth. Even Liam, Anya's closest confidant, a man known for his cynicism, had recently found himself unexpectedly smitten, his every conversation now peppered with anecdotes of his new, joyful connection. Anya genuinely rejoiced in their happiness. Her heart was not one given to petty jealousy. Yet, observing their intertwined lives, a peculiar sensation would creep in, a cold, lonely dread. It was as if their shared joy highlighted her own solitary path, casting her, by contrast, into an unwelcome shadow. The subtle pressures of society were relentless. Family gatherings often began with well-meaning but piercing inquiries. Still single, dear? Or, haven't you found a nice young man yet? Online. A never-ending scroll of engagement announcements, elaborate anniversaries, and perfectly posed couple photos served as a constant, subtle reminder. It was an unspoken curriculum of life. Find a partner, establish a home, build a family. And Anya, in this particular chapter of her life, felt she was failing the most fundamental subject. This pervasive feeling was not merely about a desire for a partner. It was a deeper, more insidious self-judgment. Anya began to project her own internal narratives of inadequacy onto others. She saw Chloe's seemingly effortless charm and believed Chloe possessed some inherent quality she lacked, a magnetism that drew love in. She observed Maya's unwavering commitment and attributed it to a capacity for deep emotional connection that she, Anya, must somehow be deficient in. This ego projection manifested as a belief that her single status was a direct reflection of her own unworthiness, a hidden flaw in her character that rendered her undesirable. The anima within her, the unconscious feminine principle that yearned for connection and relational fulfillment, felt starved, diminished by these external comparisons. One particularly poignant moment occurred during a dinner party at Chloe's newly renovated apartment. The air was thick with laughter and shared stories, but Anya found herself growing increasingly quiet, an observer rather than a participant. Chloe and her husband, hand in hand, recounted a humorous anecdote about their early dating days, their eyes sparkling with shared memories. Maya and Liam exchanged knowing glances across the table as their partners debated a trivial point. Anya felt a peculiar transparency, as though she were a ghost at the feast, utterly present yet entirely unnoticed in her singleness. Her heart felt a peculiar constriction, a sense of being invisible in the most profound way, not just to others, but even to herself, as if her existence was less valid without a romantic counterpart. The cumulative effect of these comparisons began to manifest in subtle yet significant ways. Anya, once so confident in her professional abilities, found herself second-guessing her decisions. She started to decline social invitations where she knew couples would dominate, retreating into the perceived safety of solitude, yet finding little solace there. The vibrant gardener found her plants wilting, neglected, mirroring the quiet desolation within her. She was experiencing a form of trauma psychology, not from a single dramatic event, but from the chronic, subtle invalidation of her self-worth through constant comparison. The pain was real, a silent wound festering beneath the surface of her polished exterior. One rainy Saturday, seeking refuge in a dusty old bookstore, Anya stumbled upon a slim volume titled The Unseen Architect, Building a Life from Within. Its pages were filled with philosophical musings and ancient wisdom, echoing the Stoic principles of Marcus Aurelius and Seneca. One passage resonated with particular force. True flourishing is not found in the acquisition of external goods or relationships, but in the cultivation of the inner citadel, the unshakable self. It spoke of the inherent worth of the individual, independent of their social standing or relational status. It was a call to individuation, a challenge to look inward, not outward, for validation. The book introduced the idea of the anima/animus as internal guides, not external dependencies, suggesting that true wholeness came from integrating these inner aspects, not from seeking them solely in another person. Inspired by these philosophical seeds, Anya decided to embark on an unusual journey. She enrolled in a solo backpacking trip through a remote mountain range, a place where cell service was non-existent, and the only companions were the rugged peaks and the whispering wind. It was a radical departure from her comfortable city life, a deliberate act of stripping away all external validation. The first few days were brutal. The physical exertion was immense, the solitude deafening. Without the constant hum of social interaction or the subtle distractions of city life, her mind became a battleground for her insecurities. The voices of comparison, the doubts about her self-worth, echoed louder than ever in the vast quietness of the mountains. There were moments of profound despair, moments when the ache in her heart felt so intense it threatened to overwhelm her. She missed the ease of Chloe's laughter, the quiet comfort of Maya's presence, the easy companionship of Liam. Yet, as the days turned into a week, then too something began to shift. The physical challenges forced her to rely solely on herself, to trust her own strength, her own instincts. With each steep ascent, each careful descent, a quiet confidence began to bloom. She learned to pitch her tent in the driving rain, to navigate by the stars, to find solace in the stark beauty of the wilderness. There was no one to impress, no one to compare herself to, only the raw, unfiltered experience of her own existence. One evening, perched on a rocky outcrop as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues, Anya felt an unprecedented sense of peace. She watched the light fade, then the stars emerge, one by one, each shining with its own distinct brilliance. No star competed with another. They simply were luminous and complete. In that moment, surrounded by the vastness of nature, the weight of comparison lifted. She realized that her value was not diminished by her single status, just as a single star's light is not lessened by the brilliance of a galaxy. Her journey of individuation was not about finding someone else to complete her, but about discovering the wholeness already residing within. She returned to the city transformed. The ache in her heart had not vanished entirely, for such deep-seated patterns take time to fully unravel, but it had fundamentally altered. It was no longer a wound, but a scar, a testament to a battle won. She still cherished her friends, still celebrated their joys, but now, when the comparisons arose, she had a new internal compass. She understood that their happiness did not diminish her own, and her path, though different, was no less valid, no less rich. Her heart, once feeling so invisible, had found its own vibrant, undeniable presence. The individual who perceives their romantic life as insufficient, constantly measuring it against the curated narratives of others, embodies the archetype of the unacknowledged lover. This character often falls prey to ego projection, attributing the perceived happiness and completeness of others to some inherent quality they believe they lack, thereby diminishing their own intrinsic worth and the value of their unique journey. The pervasive theme here is the societal pressure to conform to conventional relationship milestones, which can profoundly impede an individual's individuation process, leading to a deep sense of unworthiness and emotional invisibility. The heart feels unseen because its authentic needs and timeline are overshadowed by external ideals. You, who may have felt this quiet ache, this sense of being less than in the romantic arena, are invited to challenge the very premise of this comparison. Understand that the shadow at play is the collective unconscious belief that a singular definition of love and relationship validates one's existence. Shadow work in this context involves unearthing and dismantling the internalized scripts that equate self-worth with romantic partnership. Consider the profound wisdom of Marcus Aurelius, who advocated for the internal fortress, a self-sufficiency of spirit that is impervious to external circumstances. Your worth is not determined by whether you are coupled, but by the richness of your inner world, the integrity of your character, and your capacity for self-love. Embrace your journey of individuation as a sacred path, unique to you. Your capacity for love, joy, and fulfillment exists independently of a romantic partner. Nurture your anima by cultivating profound self-connection, allowing your internal landscape to become a vibrant source of emotional sustenance. When the urge to compare arises, practice a moment of stoic detachment. Observe the thought without judgment, then consciously redirect your focus to what is within your control, your own growth, your passions, your well-being. Your heart is not invisible. It is simply waiting for you to fully acknowledge and cherish its magnificent, solitary beat, recognizing that its wholeness does not depend on another's gaze. Cultivate a profound respect for your own unique story, knowing that its beauty is not diminished by the narratives of others, but rather adds to the rich tapestry of human experience. What would you think if I told you that the deepest ache of comparison often stems not from genuine deficiency, but from a fundamental misunderstanding of your own inherent value, a struggle to release the desperate need for external validation? This continuous seeking of approval, often projected onto others, keeps the heart feeling perennially invisible, perpetually striving for a recognition that can only truly blossom from within. It's a relentless chase, where the finish line constantly shifts, leaving one exhausted and perpetually unseen, far from the clamor of the modern world, in a secluded valley touched by the ethereal glow of ancient, luminescent flora. lived Lena. She was a scholar, her days spent in the hushed embrace of scrolls and forgotten texts. Her mind was a labyrinth of intricate thought, her insights profound, her wisdom often sought by those who knew of her secluded existence. Yet, despite her intellectual prowess and the genuine respect she commanded, Lena carried a deep, persistent wound. The conviction that her contributions, her very intellectual being, were invisible unless validated by the acknowledgement of a select few, specifically the esteemed Grand Elders of the Valley. The Grand Elders were legendary figures, cloaked in an aura of unparalleled knowledge and austere discernment. Their pronouncements shaped the intellectual currents of the valley, and their approval was the ultimate seal of scholarly merit. Lena found herself perpetually drawn to their presence, presenting her meticulously researched treatises, offering her unique interpretations of ancient riddles. She yearned for their nod, their quiet word of affirmation. When they offered it, a fleeting warmth would momentarily fill her. But when they remained silent, or worse, offered a casual dismissal, the familiar cold dread would descend, swiftly extinguishing any flicker of self-satisfaction. This profound reliance on external validation was a subtle but relentless chain around Lena's intellectual spirit. She would spend countless nights poring over texts, not driven purely by curiosity, but by the unspoken desire to craft an argument so flawless, a discovery so profound, that it would finally, unequivocally, earn the elders' enduring acclaim. Her own intellectual joy became secondary to this pursuit. The shadow archetype at play here was that of the perfectionistic seeker, constantly striving for an ideal, external benchmark of excellence to compensate for an underlying sense of inherent inadequacy. Her ego projection led her to believe that the elders possessed the definitive judgment of worth, a power she had unwittingly ceded to them. One of the most painful instances occurred during the annual Great Convocation, where scholars presented their most significant findings. Lena had dedicated 3 years to deciphering a series of cryptic runes, believing she had unlocked a profound truth about the valley's mystical origins. Her presentation was eloquent, her evidence meticulously gathered. She spoke with a quiet passion, her voice resonating with conviction. When she finished, a respectful silence filled the cavernous hall. Then Elder Theron, known for his piercing intellect and uncompromising standards, simply stated, "An interesting hypothesis, Lena. Perhaps more time will reveal its true merit." And with that, he moved on to the next presenter. The brevity of his response, the lack of definitive praise, struck Lena like a physical blow. The 3 years of tireless effort, the countless sacrifices, seemed to crumble into dust. She heard the quiet murmurs of approval for the next scholar, Elder Theron's effusive praise for a less ambitious but more conventionally structured argument, and felt her carefully constructed intellectual identity shatter. The ache in her heart was acute, a burning shame that her efforts, her very intellect, had been rendered utterly invisible in the face of the elders' judgment. This was a profound moment of trauma psychology, not from physical injury, but from the systemic invalidation of her intrinsic worth, fostering a deep wound to her self-worth. The incident caused Lena to retreat further into herself. Her studies became less about genuine inquiry and more about seeking definitive, undeniable proof that would, finally, force the elders to acknowledge her. She began to overanalyze every word they uttered, every gesture, searching for hidden cues of approval or disapproval. This intense focus on external validation prevented her from truly connecting with the joy of discovery, the inherent satisfaction of intellectual pursuit for its own sake. She was caught in a cycle of needing external affirmation for her anima to feel validated. Yet this very pursuit prevented her from realizing her own internal wholeness. One day, while seeking a rare manuscript in the deepest archives, Lena unearthed a collection of ancient philosophical fragments. Among them were the teachings of a forgotten sage, whose words echoed the wisdom of Seneca and the Stoics. One fragment, in particular, seized her attention. The true measure of a man is not in the applause he receives, but in the steadfastness of his spirit when none is given. Seek not to be admired, but to be admirable. This was a direct challenge to her ingrained pattern of seeking external validation. It spoke to the core principle of individuation, urging her to cultivate an internal standard of excellence, independent of others' opinions. The fragment ignited a spark within Lena. She began to experiment, not with her scholarly pursuits directly, but with her internal landscape. She started small. She would spend an entire day reading a text purely for her own enjoyment, without any intention of presenting her findings. She would write down her insights in a personal journal, not for critique, but for her own understanding. It was incredibly difficult at first. The old habit of seeking external approval was deeply ingrained. Her mind would constantly drift to what Elder Theron would think, or how her peers might react. But with conscious effort, she began to redirect her focus, to savor the quiet pleasure of pure intellectual engagement. She began to incorporate practices that fostered inner resilience. She would sit in silent contemplation each morning, observing her thoughts without judgment, a form of mental discipline echoing Stoicism. She would remind herself that her intellectual journey was her own, unique and valid, regardless of external recognition. This was her shadow work in action, confronting the unconscious belief that her worth was conditional. She started to understand that the elders' opinions, while valuable in their own right, were simply that opinions, not absolute decrees on her inherent worth. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, a profound shift began to occur. Lena still valued the wisdom of the elders, but her need for their validation began to diminish. She presented her research with a new kind of confidence, not born of a desire for praise, but from a deep conviction in her own findings. When Elder Theron offered a mild critique of a recent paper, it no longer shattered her. Instead, she listened, absorbed the feedback, and calmly engaged in a thoughtful debate, her internal compass steady and unwavering. She realized that his opinion, while respected, did not define her intellectual identity. Her most significant breakthrough came during a solitary expedition to map the valley's forgotten underground rivers. It was a perilous journey, requiring not only extensive knowledge of hydrology, but also immense courage and self-reliance. There were no elders to impress, no audience to applaud. It was just Lena, the silent echoes of the subterranean world, and the unyielding demands of the task. She faced unforeseen challenges, moments of fear and doubt, but she persevered, relying solely on her own intellect and fortitude. When she emerged, weeks later, with a detailed map and groundbreaking insights into the valley's water systems, she felt no immediate urge to present her findings to the elders. The sense of accomplishment was purely internal, a profound satisfaction that resonated deep within her soul. She had faced her own intellectual and physical limits and emerged victorious, not for external accolades, but for the inherent joy of pushing her boundaries and contributing to knowledge. She shared her findings eventually, not with a plea for validation, but as an offering of her discoveries, a testament to her own journey of individuation. The elders, witnessing this newfound serenity and self-possession, began to seek her out, not as a student seeking approval, but as a respected peer. They recognized a different kind of authority in her, one that radiated from a place of unshakable self-worth. The ache in her heart had finally dissolved, replaced by a quiet, unwavering confidence. Her heart, once rendered invisible by the desperate pursuit of external validation, now shone with its own intrinsic, undeniable light, a testament to the power of self-acceptance and the profound freedom of releasing the need for another's gaze. The individual who constantly seeks external validation, particularly from figures of authority or perceived higher standing, embodies the archetype of the unacknowledged luminary. This character, driven by ego projection, externalizes their sense of self-worth onto the opinions of others, perpetually viewing their own efforts and inherent value through a distorted lens of approval-seeking. The core theme is the pervasive human tendency to cede personal power, hindering the crucial process of individuation and trapping the heart in a cycle of perceived invisibility. The pain here is the quiet suffering of a soul starved of its own intrinsic nourishment, constantly seeking a reflection of its worth in the fleeting mirror of external applause. You, who may find yourself caught in this relentless pursuit of external validation, are invited to embark on a journey of profound liberation. Recognize the shadow at play, the deeply ingrained belief that your worth is conditional, earned only through the praise or acceptance of others. This crucial step in shadow work involves confronting the fear of not being enough on your own. Embrace the timeless wisdom of Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius. True freedom lies in recognizing what is within your control, your thoughts, your efforts, your integrity, and what is not, the opinions and judgments of others. Your inherent value is not a commodity to be granted or withheld by another. It is an immutable truth of your being. Cultivate a radical commitment to your own individuation, recognizing that your unique path, your distinct contributions, and your authentic self are inherently valuable, independent of any external seal of approval. Nurture your animus by engaging in activities purely for the joy of creation, discovery, or personal growth, without the conscious or unconscious goal of impressing others. This practice, akin to applied psychology, gradually rewires your internal validation system. When the urge to seek approval arises, pause. Acknowledge the feeling without judgment, then consciously choose to validate yourself. You are the ultimate authority on your own worth. Your heart is not invisible. It is simply awaiting your own unwavering gaze to truly recognize its profound and boundless light. Release the burden of external expectation and watch as your inner world expands, radiant and complete. Like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and share this video with others to spread positive values in life. The end. Thank you for listening.